John's heart raced as he stared out the window, watching the HOA president's black SUV pull into his driveway. He tightened his grip on the flagpole, feeling the worn wood day into his calloused hands. "Not this time," he muttered, his jaw clenched. For years, John had proudly displayed the American flag on his front lawn, a symbol of the country he had fought to defend. But now, the Homeowners Association deemed it an eyesore and demanded its removal. John refused, and the battle lines had been drawn. The doorbell rang, and John took a deep breath before swinging it open. There stood the HOA president, Helen, her perfectly coiffed hair and designer pantsuit, a stark contrast to John's weathered face and worn Marine Corps t-shirt. "Mr. Ramirez," she said, her voice tripping with false politeness, "I'm here to discuss the flag issue one last time. I do hope you'll reconsider and take it down." John's eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, I've made my position clear. That flag stays up. It's a part of who I am, and I'll be damned if I let you or anyone else take it down." Helen's lips tightened into a thin line. "Well, I'm afraid you leave us no choice. If you refuse to comply, we'll have no choice but to take legal action." She turned to leave, pausing at the edge of the porch. "You know, Mr. Ramirez, this neighborhood has certain standards to uphold. Perhaps you'd be happier somewhere else." John's grip on the flagpole tightened until his knuckles turned white. The nerve of this woman, this _civilian_, to tell him where he should live. He had fought for the freedom she now threatened to take away. As Helen climbed into her SUV and pulled away, John felt a familiar rage boil within him. He had faced down enemies on the battlefield, but now he found himself in a new kind of war, one where the lines were blurred and the stakes were just as high. Determined, John strode to his truck and drove to the local hardware store. He'd emerged minutes later, his trunk loaded with supplies. Back home, he set to work, constructing a sturdy wooden frame and mounting it firmly in the ground. As the sun began to set, John stepped back to admire his creation, a flagpole that stood tall and proud, the stars and stripes fluttering defiantly in the evening breeze. John knew that this was only the beginning. The HOA would not give up without a fight, and he was ready. He had sacrificed too much to back down now. This was his home, his country, and no one, not even the Homeowners Association, was going to take that away from him. The next morning, John awoke to the sound of a car engine rumbling in his driveway. Peering out the window, he saw Helen and two other HOA members standing by the new flagpole, shaking their heads disapprovingly. He strode outside, his muscles tensing as he approached the group. "Morning, folks. What seems to be the problem?" Helen turned to him, her brow furrowed. "Mr. Ramirez, we've discussed this. The flag must come down. It's an unsightly violation of our neighborhood covenants." John crossed his arms over his chest, refusing to back down. "I've already made my position clear, ma'am. That flag is staying up, no matter what you say." "Then I'm afraid we have no choice but to take legal action," Helen replied, her tone laced with a hint of triumph. "You're leaving us no other option." John felt his blood boil. "Legal action? You can't be serious. This is my home, my land, and that flag represents everything I fought for." He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "You may be the president of this HOA, but you're not the boss of me." Helen's expression hardened. "We'll see about that, Mr. Ramirez. You have 72 hours to take that flag down, or we'll be forced to file a lawsuit and have it removed by force." With that, she turned and stormed back to her SUV, the other HOA members hurrying to keep up. John watched them go, his heart pounding with a mix of anger and determination. As the SUV disappeared down the street, John clenched his fists, his mind racing. He knew that this was no longer just about a flag. It was about his rights, his freedom, and the principles he had sworn to defend. He would not back down, no matter the cost. Resolved, John grabbed his phone and began dialing. He needed to assemble a team, a group of allies who would stand with him against the HOA's threat. He would fight this battle, and he would win, for himself, for his country, and for every veteran who had sacrificed to protect the freedoms that now hung in the balance. Over the next 72 hours, John's home became a hub of activity as he gathered a team of supporters to help him in his fight against the HOA. Among them was his old Marine Corps buddy, Mike, a gruff but loyal friend who had served alongside him in Afghanistan. "This is bullshit, man," Mike growled, surveying the sturdy flagpole that stood defiantly in John's front yard. "You fought for that flag, and now these civvies want to take it down. Not on my watch." John nodded, his jaw set with determination. "That's why I called you, Mike. I need people I can trust to help me defend what's mine." Together, they began assembling a group of like-minded veterans, neighbors, and community activists, all united in their support for John's cause. They planned strategy, organized protests, and even reached out to local media outlets, determined to shine a spotlight on the HOA's heavy-handed tactics. As the 72-hour deadline approached, John and his team stood their ground, ready to face whatever the HOA might throw at them. But when the SUV pulled into the driveway once again, it wasn't Helen behind the wheel. It was a pair of burly security guards. "Mr. Ramirez, we've been instructed to remove that flag by any means necessary," one of the guards said, his voice gruff and unyielding. John stepped forward, his chest puffed out defiantly. "Over my dead body. This flag stays up, and you're not taking it down." The guards exchanged a glance, and before John could react, they had tackled him to the ground, his face pressed against the asphalt. Mike and the others rushed to his aid, but they too were quickly subdued by the guards' overwhelming force. As John struggled against the guards' grip, he could feel the rage building inside him. This wasn't the first time he had faced down an enemy, and he refused to back down now. With a surge of adrenaline, he managed to break free, lunging for the flagpole as the guards closed in. In the chaos that followed, the sound of shattering glass and screeching tires filled the air. John, battered and bruised, stood triumphant, the American flag still fluttering proudly above his home. The HOA's attempt to remove it had failed, and John had won the first round of a battle that was far from over. The commotion drew the attention of the entire neighborhood, and soon a crowd had gathered to witness the standoff. Among them was a local news reporter, her camera crew capturing every moment of the escalating conflict. As the guards regained their footing, Helen stepped forward, her face flushed with rage. "Mr. Ramirez, you're making a grave mistake. This is your last chance. Take down that flag, or we'll have no choice but to take legal action." John glared at her, his eyes blazing with defiance. "Legal action? Bring it on, Helen. I've fought for this country, and I'll be damned if I let you or anyone else take away my right to display the flag I risked my life for." The reporter, sensing the opportunity for a compelling story, quickly approached John and thrust a microphone in his face. "Sir, can you tell us what's going on here? Why are you refusing to take down this flag?" John took a deep breath, his gaze unwavering. "This flag represents the freedom and values that I and countless other veterans have fought to defend. The Homeowners Association wants to take that away, to silence our voices and strip us of our rights. But I won't let them. This is my home, and that flag is staying up, no matter what they try to do." The reporter's eyes widened, and she quickly turned to the camera, her expression earnest. "You heard it here, folks. A veteran's standoff with his Homeowners Association over the display of the American flag. Tensions are running high, and it's clear that Mr. Ramirez is not backing down." As the news crew continued their coverage, the crowd began to swell, with more and more people arriving to show their support for John. Some held signs, others simply cheered him on, and even a few cars honked their horns in solidarity. Helen, her face etched with frustration, turned to the guards. "Get that flag down, by any means necessary. I don't care what it takes. Just make it happen. The guards hesitated, unsure of how to proceed with the growing crowd and the media's attention now focused on the scene. John, sensing their uncertainty, seized the moment. "What's the matter, Helen? Too many witnesses for your thugs to rough me up again," he taunted, his voice dripping with disdain. The standoff had escalated, and the outcome was no longer certain. John had managed to rally the community to his cause, and the HOA's heavy-handed tactics were now on full display for all to see. As the tension continued to build, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd. It was John's wife, Sarah, her eyes wide with worry. "John, what's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I just saw the news report. What happened?" John reached out and pulled her into a tight embrace. "The HOA wants me to take down the flag, Sarah. But I won't do it. Not now. Not ever." Sarah's brow furrowed with concern. "But John, they're threatening legal action. What if they take it down by force?" John's grip tightened, his jaw set with determination. "Then I'll stand my ground, Sarah. I've fought for that flag, and I'll be damned if I let them take it away from me." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. "But what about us? What about our family? I can't bear the thought of you getting hurt, or worse." John gently cupped her face, his weathered hands trembling slightly. "I'm doing this for us, Sarah. For our freedom, for our country. I won't back down, no matter what they throw at me." As the couple embraced, the crowd erupted in a chorus of cheers and applause, their support for John's stance unwavering. The news crew, sensing the growing momentum, continued their live coverage, their cameras capturing every moment of the drama unfolding. Helen, her frustration boiling over, turned to the guards and barked a command. "Get that flag down, now. I don't care how you do it, just make it happen." The guards hesitated, their eyes darting nervously between the defiant veteran and the increasingly hostile crowd. But before they could make a move, a familiar voice called out from the sidelines. "Hold it right there." John and the others turned to see a local police officer striding forward, his hand resting on the holster of his sidearm. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his gaze sweeping over the tense scene. Helen, her composure slipping, tried to explain the situation, but the officer quickly cut her off. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you and your associates to leave the premises immediately. This is private property, and you have no right to be here, especially not with the intent to use force." As the guards and HOA members reluctantly retreated, the crowd erupted in thunderous applause, their cheers echoing through the neighborhood. John stood tall, his flag still fluttering proudly above his home, a symbol of his unwavering resolve and the community's support. The battle had been won, but John knew that the war was far from over. The HOA would not give up so easily, and he would need to be ready for whatever they had in store. In the days that followed, the story of John's stand against the HOA quickly went viral, sparking a national conversation about the rights of homeowners and the overreach of homeowners associations. News outlets from across the country covered the ongoing saga, interviewing John, his supporters, and even the members of the HOA. Public opinion overwhelmingly sided with John, with many praising his courage and condemning the HOA's heavy-handed tactics. Helen, the HOA president, found herself the target of intense scrutiny and criticism. Her attempts to justify the association's actions were met with skepticism and outrage, as more and more people rallied behind John's cause. Undeterred, the HOA doubled down, filing a lawsuit against John in an effort to force the removal of the flag. But with the public's attention firmly fixed on the case, the legal proceedings quickly became a public relations nightmare for the association. John, meanwhile, remained steadfast in his resolve. He continued to hold press conferences and community events, sharing his story and rallying support from veterans organizations, civil liberties groups, and ordinary citizens. "This isn't just about a flag," John would often say, his voice filled with conviction. It's about the fundamental rights and freedoms that we as Americans have fought to defend. And I'll be damned if I let some homeowners association take that away from me. As the legal battle dragged on, the HOA found itself facing increasing pressure from both the public and local authorities. The City Council, sensing the growing public outcry, passed a resolution protecting the rights of residents to display the American flag, effectively undermining the HOA's case. Realizing that they were fighting a losing battle, the HOA eventually backed down, agreeing to drop the lawsuit and allow John to keep his flag. The announcement was met with a roar of celebration from the community, who had rallied behind the veteran's unwavering stand. In the aftermath, John emerged as a local hero, his story inspiring others to stand up against the overreach of homeowners associations and fight for their rights. He had won a hard-fought victory, not just for himself, but for every American who cherished the freedoms that the flag represented. The battle may have been over, but John knew that the fight for those freedoms would never truly end. And he was more than ready to continue the struggle, armed with the unwavering support of his community and the moral high ground that he had so defiantly claimed. In the weeks that followed, John's story continued to reverberate throughout the country, inspiring others to take a stand against perceived injustices in their own communities. Across the nation, veterans and their supporters organized rallies and protests, using John's example as a rallying cry for the protection of their rights and the preservation of the values they had fought to defend. The hashtag #StandWithJohn quickly gained traction on social media, becoming a symbol of resistance against the overreach of homeowners associations and the erosion of individual freedoms. The HOA, faced with the overwhelming backlash, found itself on the defensive, struggling to justify its actions and regain the public's trust. Helen, the HOA president, was forced to step down amid mounting pressure, and the association itself was left scrambling to repair its damaged reputation. But the impact of John's story extended far beyond the confines of his own neighborhood. Lawmakers at the state and federal level took notice, with several politicians introducing legislation aimed at curbing the power of homeowners associations and protecting the rights of homeowners to display the American flag. One such bill, dubbed the John's Law, gained significant momentum, with co-sponsors from both sides of the aisle. The legislation proposed strict limitations on the ability of HOAs to restrict the display of the American flag, as well as stiff penalties for any attempts to do so. As the bill made its way through the legislative process, John found himself in high demand, testifying before congressional committees and appearing on national television to share his story and advocate for the proposed law. "This isn't just about me," John would often say, his voice filled with conviction. "It's about the fundamental rights and freedoms that every American deserves to exercise, without fear of retribution or retaliation from a homeowners association." The public's outpouring of support for John's cause continued to grow, with thousands of citizens contacting their representatives to voice their support for the legislation. As the pressure mounted, lawmakers from both parties found themselves increasingly compelled to act, recognizing the political and moral imperatives of standing up for the rights of homeowners and the sanctity of the American flag. In the end, John's Law passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, a testament to the power of one man's unwavering stand and the movement it had inspired. The victory was bittersweet for John, who knew that the fight was far from over, but also a testament to the resilience of the American spirit and the enduring values that the flag represented. In the aftermath of his hard-fought victory, John found himself thrust into the national spotlight, his story becoming a symbol of the ongoing struggle to protect individual freedoms and the sanctity of the American flag. Invitations poured in from across the country, with John being asked to speak at veterans events, community gatherings, and even congressional hearings. He embraced his newfound role as a champion of the people, using his platform to advocate for the rights of homeowners and the preservation of the values he had fought to defend. As the dust settled, John and his family found themselves the recipients of an outpouring of support and generosity from both the local and national community. Neighbors who had once been divided by the HOA's heavy-handed tactics now came together to celebrate John's triumph, hosting block parties and fundraisers in his honor. But even as John basked in the glow of his victory, he knew that the fight was far from over. The HOA, though forced to back down, remained a formidable adversary, and he knew that they would be ever vigilant in their efforts to reassert their authority and silence dissent. Undeterred, John continued to speak out, using his newfound platform to shine a light on the broader issue of homeowners association overreach and the erosion of individual freedoms. He forged alliances with like-minded organizations and individuals, working tirelessly to ensure that the rights and protections enshrined in John's law were upheld and expanded. In the end, John's story became a testament to the power of one person's unwavering determination to stand up for what they believe in. His defiant stand against the HOA had not only secured his own right to display the American flag, but had also inspired a nationwide movement to protect the fundamental freedoms that the flag represents. As the sun set on his front lawn, John stood tall, the stars and stripes fluttering proudly above his home. He knew that the battle had been won, but the war for freedom would never truly end. And he was more than ready to continue the fight, armed with the unwavering support of his community and the knowledge that his actions had made a lasting impact on the lives of countless others.